thanks for coming on my podcast.
That's all right. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, a lovely room that we can see in the background there. So for anyone that doesn't know Fiona, she makes wonderful cakes. And if anyone's going to come on one of my retreats, she often makes them for me for the retreat. So you're in for a treat if you come along. So that would be wonderful. So we're going to jump on today and just talk a bit about when Fiona had the root chakra coaching with me, which was last year, was it last year? Can't remember how long ago.
It doesn't seem that long ago. If it was just before Christmas. It was till the end of last year, wasn't it? No, it was this year. Was it?
It might have been the beginning of this year. I'm trying to remember when I was doing my training for my trauma coaching. So yeah, it probably was this year, right at the beginning. But anyway, that scenario. So we go into all the things that relates to with the root chakra, which is finances, relationships. We went into things like childhood stuff, didn't we? Things to do with money, that sort of thing. Maybe if you could just tell us what you think your biggest takeaway was from that and what you think's changed from having the coaching, which was quite a long session. It was only the one session, wasn't it? But it was quite a long one. Yeah. And you had like a workbook to complete in your own time as well to help you focus, didn't you, on that?
I think it's so hard to remember all the details, but what I can really strongly remember was that a lot of my mother wound came up during that session, and that actually I think is the root of all of my issues with my finances, which has been my main issue as a single parent, self-employed in an industry that got shut down by COVID, and just my whole life unraveled, and ending up with no income and homeless, and it was just awful. And I've been sort of in this mindset though for a long time of not being able to make enough money. And then it was in that session that we did that you took me back to my relationship with my mother, and I think so much suddenly made sense from what you were talking me through, really. And my mother never really worked. She was quite a sport little girl, and then went from being a sport little girl to a sport little wife. And I can remember her really coaching me into the only way you're going to get money is through a man, and you're never going to make enough money. And it's just this drip feed of I'm not, and I work crazy hours and crazy hard and constantly trying to generate money, but in the back of my head is, well, until I get married I'm never going to have enough money, because money comes from men. So a lot of our session made me suddenly realize that I've still got a lot, even though I have no relationship with her and haven't had one for decades, there's still a lot of that influence there, and also the way she conducted herself, and still does to this day, is very slack and slovenly, and I've drilled it into my children, if you're going to do something, you've got to do it properly, or it's not worth doing at all. And I think all of my issues with everybody not being able to do I'll do your job because you can't do it for yourself, and all that, like, hit up sort of, I'm running around doing everything for everybody because nobody can do something properly. It all, I realised from our session, goes straight back to because my mother was so slack, and even as a child I struggled so much with that, having to sort of pander around her inabilities, and it just made me sort of hyper able, really. Whenever I did do something well, she'd then off and say, trust you to be able to do that, and just there was never any well done, or you've done really well. So I've been in this constant spin of working stupidly hard, zero reward, and you made it all make sense that it starts and ends with her.
And I think there was a lot of resistance around finances as well, wasn't there, if I can remember rightly? So I think when you laid it out, or we did the session, you started to see that you had more abundance there, didn't you? You started to see the blessings, and you flipped it, didn't you?
Yeah, definitely. And some of the scenarios that you were mentioning about other people's potential situations, I was like, oh, I don't have that, I don't have that. And I suddenly realised, because my whole thing that I strive for is freedom. And I just think, you know, physical freedom, emotional freedom, but also that financial freedom. And when you were describing situations like, well, I don't have that, I don't have that. And actually it made me realize I'm really free. And I've just, it's just, you know, the bills. That's my only restriction, really. Being able to just, I want to be able to have the freedom to just, you know, buy whatever I want, move wherever I want, pay everything without it feeling like, you know, I'm hemorrhaging, you know, every last penny. So yeah, it really made me realise I'm quite lucky, really. I've got a long way. When I had no freedom as a child, and suddenly, yes, my situation is a really, really good one. It's just that last little piece of the puzzle with the finances.
Do you think that's embodying that energy of it as well? You know, when we talk about money being a form of energy and just sort of shifting it, so just allowing the flow rather than feeling like you've got to hold on to it, you've got to have restrictions in place. You know, like you were saying when we were talking earlier about like the self-care, that you didn't want to do something just in case you couldn't pay the rent. Whereas really the opening up and allowing yourself to receive would then have a knock-on effect, and then it would start generating that energy and that abundance coming in as well. So you see the shift that's happened there.
Definitely. And even either side of the session that we did with the root, joining your circle, that was a real, oh, I'd love to, but I can't justify that money. And you know, turning you down each month, going, I'm really sorry, I can't, I've got to focus on making all my bills and I can't justify that. And then we had our session, and literally the other side of our session, I was like, oh, it's only that, I'm joining the circle. And we get all of that, all that meditation, all that healing, just for that tiny amount. Whereas literally the other side, I was like, oh, I can't, it's too much, it's too much. And it was like a switch flicking.
Well, actually, you're in 2 circles now, aren't you?
Yeah. I love them. And I'm going to your retreat and I'll find the money, because it's rather than focusing on the finances, whereas as soon as anything was like, oh, that would be good, I'd go straight to, yeah, but how much will it cost? I can't afford that. And now I'm like, yeah, that'll be good, I'm going to do that. And I'll work it out. Yeah. Financially, but I'll get there. And there's less of that feeling like it's a noose around my neck and more of like, oh, well, I'll sort that, it'll be fine. It'll happen. Because I want to do that, and that's more important.
Yeah. So like just having the one session made quite a bit of difference, didn't it, as well? Yeah, that's really good. And we've also talked a bit about human design as well. I did that in the circle for you ladies, didn't I, at some point? So you know that you're a generator.
Yeah.
And you know that your energy type and how you're meant to function as well. So since we've done a little talk on that, do you think that you were sticking to your energy type, your blueprint, if you like, of how you function? Do you feel like you were coming from the right place, so to speak?
So no, I don't think I was, from what you were saying, because you said generators are, we're supposed to ponder and make, you know, informed decisions and leave it for a little bit, see how it sits, and then proceed. And I just never ever do that. I literally am very much thinking on my feet, and it's impulsive and it's frantic, and I just run with stuff, and then I go, oh, that's not worked, and I run in the opposite direction, and then I was saying to you about making cakes, and suddenly it's hot, and I'm like, I've got to do ice cream, and I before I know it, I've bought an ice cream freezer, all the ice cream tubs, an ice cream course, and an ice cream cart that I can't actually put together because it's so complicated. So I have an ice cream cart in bits, and I've charged, and I've gone, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. And it's only now that I'm beginning to realise that this instinctive, like, decision making is really not working. It's not what I should be doing.
But that's a lot to do with trauma, isn't it? From your flight and fight response, from your nervous system being a bit shot to pieces over the years. Not only from your mother, but you had quite an abusive, if you don't mind me mentioning it, a relationship, didn't you, with your husband, which I know that you.
Well, my mother I never got on with, and my dad was more of the parent to me, but actually my dad was an horrific abuser, and I called him out on it when I was 9 years old. So our relationship ended when I was 9 because I highlighted what he was doing. And so I grew up walking into a room thinking, right, where's best to be at arm's length and where's the door? And, you know, so I had all of that, which is what made my ex-husband look normal. You know, I had my dad here on the scale of, you know, men, and then my husband was there, but I didn't realize at the time that normal was right over there, and safe. So yeah, I had that. So that was all my adult life, actually, because we met when we were teenagers. So my whole brain development was within abusive relationships.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that's why I'm very instinctive and think quickly and run with it, because I didn't have time to sit, because, you know, I had to get safe.
Yeah, well, yeah, I understand that. And it's quite common for women that have been in those sort of relationships growing up, because it's sort of is normal. It's what they understand. So then when they progress and get married or a boyfriend or something, that feels normal to them. That's all they know. They don't realise that it's not normal until time goes on and they're either having breakdowns or things that are happening, or they're getting really abused in some way, whether it's physical or emotionally abused. And usually I think when children are involved, women then start to think, hold on a minute, I don't want this for mine. And they start thinking, no, I need to shift it now. I need to come out of these situations. Why is this happening? Maybe question it a bit more. Probably have questioned it anyway, I would expect throughout it. But
then it's such a big step to break up a family. And it was, you're completely right, it wasn't until my son saw, and he actually had to step in, because I don't think I'd have got through it if my son hadn't stopped it. And my daughter then saw an incident as well. And it was then that I was like, I don't want my son to think this is how you treat women and get away with it, because look, this woman stays. And I certainly don't want my daughter thinking that this is how men treat you, and that it's okay, you stay with it. So it was those moments that made me go, right, I've got nothing. I literally didn't even have any clothes. I certainly didn't have any money. And I didn't have any people, because I'd been, you know, the classic isolation. But I knew I just had to get out and manage. I took the children, I took the dogs, and I took the Hoover. It's so weird what you take in that moment. That's mine, because I don't know where I'm going, but at least it'll be clean. So, yeah.
All things, the Hoover.
No, I hate hoovering, but that's what I took. So yeah, you just have to, because you can't let the next generation think that that's how you behave. So yeah.
It's good that we can laugh about those things, though, isn't it? Things you do in the moment of madness, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I might have grabbed my shoes or something. Do you know what I mean? I was like, well, I paid a lot of money for those shoes. I think I'll grab those, but not the Hoover. Oh, dear. So how do you think like the meditations and things help you as we go along? You know, we do different things in the circles, and we was talking earlier about the one we did where we did like a past life, and you went in there. And what did you get from that? Because we did that a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, that one?
That was
interesting.
I always panic a little bit, because I just think I'm not psychic enough, I'm not in tune enough, and because I'm so busy, whatever I am getting, I probably don't hear it most of the time because I'm busy working. But your sessions make me stop, and that's why I think I get so much out of them. But yes, that session where we had to, I love your meadows. I can really see those meadows when you walk us up the meadows, and it's just very calming. And then the forest, and then the doors. Mine was red with a pointy top, I don't know why. And then you were describing going through the door, and the other people on the meditation, they saw the most incredible things like contracts and dates and ships.
Yeah, some do.
Amazing. And I stepped into pitch black, and I was like, you know, I knew I couldn't do it. But then I realized that the pitch black, because there were roots under my feet, I realized I was inside an enormous tree trunk. And actually, as a child, I used to hide in trees. I loved trees.
Oh, wow.
I used to hide climb them and sit and pretend that I wasn't there, so no one would find me. Or there was one in Grantchester that was hollow, and I used to crawl in there, and I used to think that it was where the fairies lived. So I loved all that. So to then find myself in a tree, I think is actually quite apt. So once I realised, stopped sulking, that it wasn't that I wasn't seeing anything, I was actually inside a tree, and then noticed that I had moccasins on from like Native American sort of homemade shoes, and I had like a sort of linen smocky dress, and it just felt like I was in potentially a past life. And I'm fascinated by the Native Americans, so I think that must have been something resonating there. Yeah, and then got handed a candle. So I think I've put myself in a self-imposed dark little room, trying to skip off with the fairies in their tree trunk. And I think something was saying, you don't have to actually, here's a candle, get out there, sort yourself out, and stop locking yourself away. Because I do that whole, don't need anybody, never had anyone as a child, never had anyone in my marriage, got my children, that's all I need, got my business, and I sort of link. So I think that was just nudging me to stop it and get out.
Yeah, I think that we all realise now that we do need connection. Since lockdown happened and everyone was really isolated and couldn't work and do this stuff, there's so much mental health out there now because people are isolated. I think it's that makes you understand you do need connection with other people, even though we do a lot of things like this online, and that obviously is a result of lockdown as well. But sometimes we need to have that personal connection, that we meet up, like say doing workshops or retreats and things like that, where women can get together and bond again, because I think that's missing at the moment. Those sort of friendships are missing. But I mean, we've worked together for quite a long time. We've known each other about 10 years or something.
Okay. Do you remember the day we met?
I'm trying to think now.
You won't do, because you meet millions of people, but I remember it really, really clearly.
I bet I'll remember. Go on, tell me.
So I was exhibiting at a wedding fair in Chelmsford. And because I'm a cake maker, I had all my display cakes, and then I have a load of sample cakes. And what I used to do was just have these tiny little pieces of cake with a blob of icing on them cut up for people to help themselves to. But people would literally walk past my stand and grab cake and walk off without even talking to me. So I started to put it away in tins, and I was very careful about who I gave it to. And only if somebody came up to the stand and asked about a wedding cake with a specific date, then I would say, would you like some cake, like that? And just make sure that the right people got my cake. I never gave it to anybody unless they'd talked to me about wedding cakes. And I remember at that wedding show, I had people lined up all in front of my table looking at all the weddings, and you walked behind all those people. You weren't even stopping, and I can remember just grabbing my samples and pushing through everyone else and going up to you going, do you want some cake? And there was something about you that I knew I had to talk to you, and you hadn't asked me about a wedding or anything. I broke all my own rules, but I had to talk to you, and I didn't know you were a medium, didn't know anything about you. You were there because you were doing your
it was my celebrant work.
Yes.
Yeah, and I still love your cakes now. Oh wow, that's amazing. Oh, I know, like when we was reminiscing earlier, because we've done things. You came to my parents once, didn't you? And we did the angel board. I couldn't actually remember what we were doing because we've done a few things together. But we were talking about your granddad, weren't we? Your granddad always
He loves you.
Yeah.
He follows you around. Whenever I'm coming to see you, he sees you, doesn't he? He comes to you first.
Yeah. As I said to Fiona, like, he was here last night. I didn't realise who it was at first. I'm like, go away, I'm not in the mood. I was like, I don't want to know. And then suddenly I thought, I think that's Fiona's granddad. He's a bit early.
Because at your mum's house, he was actually walking about upstairs. Because I thought, I was sure your parents had gone away and you were dog sitting. But then when I heard the footsteps, I was like, they must be here, but just staying out the way. And then when I got up to leave, and I was stood on the doorstep talking to you, saying goodbye, and he rang the doorbell, didn't he? Because then there was a bell further in the kitchen, and there were still people in the kitchen. They were like, "Who's at the door?" But he was so cross that we weren't talking to him. I think because we'd done an angel board and not talk to him.
Oh, because we could literally hear someone walking about, couldn't we, upstairs? And there wasn't anybody else in the house. Definitely not upstairs. Anyway, there was people downstairs from doing the angel board session that we were doing. Yeah, I love doing those. They're really good. We did past lives on those as well. Did you do any past life on that session? Can you remember?
No, we had questions. We were asking different questions. And I can really remember asking questions. I'd been entered into Wedding Cake Designer of the Year for Essex awards, and I'd done it twice, and I'd been a runner-up. And I can remember thinking, I'm not doing it ever again. It's a load of nonsense anyway. Everybody's a good cake maker. Everybody's, the right style for whatever couple. There's no best or whatever. I'm not entering into a hate competition, not doing it. And then got to that angel session, and I was like, shall I enter this year's? And it said yes. And I was like, am I going to win? And it said yes. And it was really, really fast. It was going like crazy. And so I entered it and I won. So it was.
I remember you did win it. Yeah. I didn't notice because you asked the questions. Oh, wow, that's interesting, isn't it? Oh, and do you know who your guides are? Have you ever done any work to connect who your guides are?
Yeah, we did that not that long ago with one of the circles.
Oh, one of our ones, yeah.
Yeah, and I have got 5 guides, it said. They were all female, which I think is really important.
I recall now, yeah.
Yeah, and when we were doing it, when we were meditating, my whole right-hand side went icy cold. And I think you said that female guides come on your right side and male guides come on your left. So yeah, my whole right side was cold. So they're definitely all female. Yay!
Well, I don't know if that's traditionally for some people, but that's how it works for me. But I could be back to front, but it doesn't matter. It's just how you relate to it and how it sits well with you. Just that's how it's always been for me. So I can always tell, like when granddad comes in or somebody for a person I'm reading for, it's their dad or granddad or whatever, they will come onto the left and the females come to the right. I think it could be different traditionally for other people, but that's the way I work. And I think with my circles as well, I think because I work that way, the people I work with work that way. But it doesn't matter. It's just whether it resonates with you or not, whichever side. But we pretty much did think that you had all females in yours. I think you would have known if you had a man.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure years ago, like 10 years ago, I joined your circle, your actual in-person circle in Chelmsford, and we did guides then, and it came up the same.
Yeah.
Oh, it was until we did it the other week that I was like, I think this seems familiar, and then I remembered, yes, so it's exactly the same. And it's with the in-person circle, I got a real visual of my main guide, and she looked like adamant. She had that real androgynous sort of highway kind of makeup and blousy shirt. So yeah, just a sort of strong, powerful female. I think that's what I was getting.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because I got a new guide.
Did you?
Yeah. There's somebody had shifted out. Well, I think he might have been on the sidelines for a while and not really come forward, because my main guide's Dave and he loves it and he does all sorts of things with me, he enjoys it. But yeah, this new one sort of stepped in and he's all about meditation and doing that. So he's Asian, I think he's Indian. And he come forward that day and he was to tell me, I've worked with him a few times since then. I've actually checked back in with him and asked him if he has any other roles or if that's what his role is. But yeah, he says it's definitely for meditation. So he's probably always been there. So I reckon I've got to step up in some form with the meditation now, rather than just doing what I normally do. I think there's something more that I've got to do, which I've got to work with him to step things up a bit. But yeah, I was quite intrigued. I love it when somebody else gets a new one, but then I thought, oh, excellent, I've actually got a new one as well that I can work with.
So do they just come in as and when you need something new, and then they help you with that, and then they disappear when you
they do, yeah, they're coming for a reason, and then when they've done their little job, if you like, they go off and they'll probably go and help someone else, and you may get a new one replacing them, or you might not need another one for that period of time. So When I did ask him, he's sort of been in the background, but not sort of forward like he is now, helping me. So that's why I know that something else is probably going to take off to do with that, because he stepped forward. But when we do our next circle, at my one, we'll go in and explore that a bit more as well and see what else we can get. So that'd be quite interesting. Yeah, I've been, you know, sort of asking questions and finding out stuff for myself, and yeah, I love it. I just love it. It's interesting how it's all going and how things flow. So I think it's good to keep a check. Could you keep a journal? Do you keep of what you do?
No, I don't.
But is it from Circle? Do you not have a journal? Ooh. You must have a good memory then.
I understand what it is. Is it like just writing down? Well, tell me, what is it? Because I don't really understand.
It's to write down everything you get in the meditations and what you do that day. So if we are given particular cards, we always do a little card reading, don't we? So what the cards mean for you, so you can go back over them, what crystals to use, what you get in your meditations as well. So it's all messages that come in there, and what you intuitively pick up. And also some people get in their dreams that night, they dream stuff. And they think, oh yeah, that makes sense to what happened yesterday, and write that in there. It's just something to refer back to, because then if you can go like a month down the line and go back and see if any of that sort of come to fruition. Sometimes it's to lead you somewhere, and so just sometimes you might be in a difficult situation. It's to bring something to your attention that you can get an idea how to work with it. So that's what they do to me. I could be in a bit of a tricky situation for some reason, whatever that might be, and then I can ask them and they'll give me the information, and I know how to move forward or whether to take action or not. It might be just a fleeting thing and you just need to leave it and it will sort itself out. Sometimes we don't always need to take action, just let it unravel itself. Sometimes it could be with people that you could be having a bit of a conflict with, and it's not really your stuff, because people do like to project their stuff onto other people because they get triggered in some way. So that was a bit of a learning curve for me as well, is like realizing I've been projected upon and just like, well, I'm not taking this. It's not like, remember we had the conversation about it's not true.
Yeah.
People like to say stuff and you go, well, that's not true.
That's been so huge. You saying that to me has just made, it's like a light bulb moment, because I've just been constantly battling and trying to undo an injustice. And I remember saying to you, oh, they're saying things about my cakes being horrible. And you're like, yeah, but they're not. It's not true. And I'm like head on into a battle. And you're like, but why? It's not true. We all know it's not true. Your cakes are lovely. They've won awards. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's not true. Why am I wasting all that energy when I know, and everyone I need to know knows, all my customers know my cakes are nice. So yeah, and that I've stuck with that. That was in our session, wasn't it? When you said that, and I was really, it was like being slapped. It really made me stop and think. And but I've stuck with it, and something's happened here, and one of my nice neighbours was like, yeah, but you should have said this and you should have said that. And I was just like, no, what's the point? And I've stayed in that nice energy of like, leave them to it. Yeah. What's the point? And it's really refreshing. It's quite peaceful in that little bit. You don't have to go into battle.
You don't have to take it on board. I've had situations that happen to me and I've said it to somebody and they go, did you let them get away with that? And I think, it doesn't bother me. It's not true. It's like they're dumbfounded, just looking at me. It's like, how could you just leave it? Because it's not true. It's only if you believe it about whatever that you're going to get really rankled by it. If you don't really believe it, well, why would you care? It doesn't matter anymore. So I always think that's a really good way to reflect back on. If someone says something to you and you think, hold on a minute, no, that's not true. Just get on with your day. Leave them to it. It's their problem. It's not yours. Yeah. Have you got your awards out in your shop, by the way?
Yes. I line them up. I polish them.
Oh, wow. I love it. And so
and I think that's a nice number. I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah. You've got 3, did you say?
Yeah. I've got,
wow.
it was Wedding Cake Designer of the Year 2017 and 2018 for Essex, and then I moved to Cambridge, and then I got, well, COVID happened, and then I was awarded the Best Wedding Cake Designer for Cambridge in 2021, and then last year I was awarded the Best Allergen-Free cake business in Cambridge 2023, because I do loads of, because I've got every allergy going, because I've inhaled so much cake over the last 9 years that I'm now allergic to every element of cake. So I can't really tolerate gluten or any dairy and sugar. I think every time I make icing, I'm in a cloud, so I just breathe in so much sugar. So the second I have sugar, my body's going, yeah, no, we're done here. We don't need any more of that. So I then make cakes that cater for all those allergies, because I need to eat it. But then I've found that there's an awful lot of people out there with allergies. So it's actually been, what's that thing where people say, because it was a real pain to have all these allergies. This is my craft and I can't even eat it. You know, I used to get quite cross. But actually, your biggest mess can be your biggest message, can't it? So yeah, not being able to eat cake has meant I've found ways of creating alternative cake, which a lot of people want.
Yeah, so in every lesson there's a blessing, really, isn't there? Once you figure it out, it becomes your superpower, doesn't it, after that?
And not to do that whole boudica on a chariot charging into battle, but to go, what can I learn from this? Yeah,
oh, that's excellent. And you do stuff online as well, don't you now? Have you got something where people can order online as well?
My website has got, you can book classes, because I teach people to make their own cakes as well, and also celebration cakes can be bought online, but they're for collection only, so unless you're near to here, yeah, that's all. It's all.
Pop your website below if you.
Oh, thank you.
Bring it over to me, and so I don't get it wrong, and then I'll stick it on the end of this, so if anyone wants you, they can find you and message you to see if they want it. It might be somebody listening to this. There's lots of allergies that need help, you know. Maybe they want a wedding cake and they need help, or a young child, you know. So I think, you know, it's definitely needed. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and I love your setup there. I love all the flowers and that in there. I'd like to come there and have like tea and cake.
Oh, come up any time. Be lovely.
I should do
my tree trunk. I've decorated it and I just stay in it.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, well, thank you for talking to me today. So it's really lovely to see you again as well. And thank you for sharing that for everyone. And I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for everything you do for us as well. I couldn't get through any of this without you. You know that. Me lunging forward with that cake was for a reason. You're never going to get rid of me.
Oh, thank you. Speak to you soon, Fiona. Bye for now.
That's love. Bye.